Good day to you. You probably came to this video because you want to find out more about this custom build I did on this BX23S. Bought this BX23S used. I purposely wanted to find one with the quick connect skid steer mounts on the front of it. Knew in the future I wanted to do some stuff with implements and doing some modifications and moving things around. Wanted the versatility of having the skid steer quick connects on it. It's coming very handy with the bucket, what you're going to see here with the plow. So this is going over what I did for the build of this plow. I was looking in the market for something to be able to mount, to the skid steer plate on this tractor, and I really didn't see anything right off the shelf that I wanted. Obviously Land Pride has accessories and a lot of things out there that you can put on here. One of the things I wanted was make sure that I had a plastic blade or some sort of non-steel blade that was not going to inhibit plowing. I didn't want to scratch up my seal coat, didn't want to scratch up any sealant and cracks, didn't want it to rip up the lawn. So once I started looking around for plows, most all of them obviously come with like a steel blade. I could swap out the blades on it. The poly blades are very expensive. Actually, the first year owning this tractor, I decided to see how I liked plowing with the tractor. I say the word plowing loosely because I used the bucket. And on the bucket, I just strapped a 2x4 to the underneath of the bucket and just attach the 2x4 to the bottom of the bucket using the pre-drilled holes that would be for the optional scraper. And so I just did that the first year. Obviously it just kind of wears down the wood a little bit, but it doesn't catch anything, it doesn't rip anything up, it doesn't do the cleanest job. And I learned real quick why you don't like using a bucket to clear snow. Obviously it's not like a picture perfect where everything rolls into the bucket. It just kind of gets a little bit in the bucket and then just spills off the side. So you have no control over the spill off on the side. You can't angle it, can't do anything with it. So I was like, okay, this is great. It worked well. The tractor didn't have any traction issues with the four-wheel drive. I have 2 sets of tires for it. I had the aggressive industrial tires I use in the winter. Then I have the Turf Saver tires that I use in the summer months. So I said, hi, the tractor's working out pretty well. But I definitely want to try to find something that won't rip up the driveway, won't rip up the lawn, also won't rust, won't look like crap in a few years if it gets scratched up, scraped up. So I started looking around, and I don't actually remember how I got to it, but I found this brand called Nordic Plow. I started looking around at some of their videos, look at their website. I'm like, I don't know if this will work or not. But decided to reach out to the manufacturer Nordic Plow and tell them what I want to do, just see if they had any product or something that would fit what I'm looking for. And the first thing he said is, oh no, we don't have anything for tractors, nothing for skid steers, nothing like that. I said, okay. He's like, we do have the poly edges. I was like, yeah, I know. I really don't want to go down that route. He's like, we also make a curved edge for our large municipality trucks. It's like, oh really? And so he sent me some videos about some info about it. It's a pretty cool design. He's like, all our plows have the same rounded blade that like the big commercial stuff. He goes, we designed it originally to be for commercial applications. We found it as a benefit to the steel blade that's ripping up streets, causing potholes, those little things in the middle of the expressway that has a reflector in it. Those weigh several pounds. When you pop those suckers up and throw them in a car, you're causing damage. He's like, this rounded blade solves all those problems. I said, yeah, but how do you scrape anything up with it? And he's like, that's the beauty of our patent. I think it's still patent pending, or maybe it's patented already. The angle, they claim that the angle is designed in a way that still kind of cleans up the street. And obviously on the commercial application, you're dumping salt too. I don't like using salt on my driveway. I like getting it just clear and the sun does the work and melts the rest of it off. So I said, okay, well, I'm not really sure how well that's going to work at, scraping up on a driveway. He's like, you'd be surprised. So he sent me a few videos of this plow on different pieces of equipment. They make this plow for, it's the same plow regardless, but they make the mounts for anything from like zero-turn mowers, ATVs, golf carts, pretty much any of the smaller things out there, riding lawn mowers, all that stuff. They make the plow a mount for it. So I started watching the videos, and it was intriguing. There's videos of them even driving this, using this plow over grass and pushing, I don't know if it's mulch or dirt or something like that. And yeah, it didn't rip up the grass at all. So I said, oh, that's kind of intriguing. So I started going back and forth. Ends up that Nordic Plow is in the Chicagoland suburbs. I'm also in the Chicagoland suburbs. I was going back and forth about some of the designs and parts I'd need and things. And he was like, yeah, we don't have XYZ. We don't have the capability to do this. It more or less, there's a lot of things he's like, we're not going to do for a one-off. I said, that's fine, makes sense. So I said, these are the things I'd like or I need to complete this build. And he said, all right, sounds like with everything you need, get the universal like ATV plow. And there's two options, 49-inch plow or 64-inch plow. And because it's plastic, you see in some of these pictures coming up here, you see because it's plastic, it actually comes in sections. So the only difference between the 64-inch and the 49-inch is one additional section, some hardware to hold it together, and then there's a rectangular steel channel or tube in the back that holds everything together. So really, if you ever need to change to a bigger blade, I believe you could work with them directly. I never asked this question yet, but I believe you could say, hey, I just need the steel tube and the additional plastic piece with the hardware. And you don't need to buy all the stuff all over again. You can make a bigger plow. I decided to go for a 49-inch plow because of a couple reasons. One is, if you have a straight level bottom on this plow, like most things on a plow, if you have something this long and your ground's uneven, not nearly as big of a deal as you have something this long and the ground's uneven, it's higher there than there, you're not going to get as much clearing. So I said, I want to try to get as much clearing as I can do while still covering the width of the tractor. So like 49 inches still wider than the wheel base, and it's just slightly wider than the skid steer plate. So I said that should work. The other reason is maneuverability. I didn't want something big hanging off. As you guys know, as you move farther and farther away from the front, the steering area of the tractor, every turn you make is magnified. So I wanted something as low profile as possible. So he's like, okay, you should get this kit. Let me know whatever else you need once you get everything ordered. I'll help you out with it. I said, okay, sounds great. So I start shopping around. The next thing I had to shop for was the skid steer mounting plate. There's tons of them out on the market. I definitely wanted to find something that was reasonably priced, and because I didn't know if this was going to work out or not. You know, going back, I wouldn't have changed anything I've done. Going forward, probably still wouldn't change anything I've done, but maybe for other people, for other applications, they may want to do something else. So there's some skid steer plates that kind of like cut down here and they're open because that's you're like pass through, walk through. A little bit less expensive because not as much metal. As you see here, I have a hitch receiver. I'll go into that a little bit later. But I ended up finding this on the skid steer plate on eBay, just a blank universal skid steer plate. And I thought I found it from a vendor that shipped out of Illinois, actually the north suburbs, but sadly, like typical, sometimes there's little games on eBay. It ended up shipping out of California, so it took like a week and a half to get delivered. Overall, no complaints. It did get delivered, free delivery, obviously you're paying for it in the price. The box was a little scuffed up, a little damage here and there, but overall the plate was fine. There's a few scuffs and things there, but you can see I've painted it black already anyways. So got it in. You see in the pictures here, throw it on the skid steer. There were some areas that the bottom of this plate kind of hit the stops, or whatever you want to call it, on the bottom of the Kubota where the locking pins are. I was going to grind those down to make it fit a little bit better, but I figured, the pins still work. It kind of holds it in. It won't slop around in it. I just let it be. So I got that in. After I got that in, because I want to make sure I had all the parts I needed before I dropped the dimes on getting the plow, because also I knew I wanted a skid steer plate because I wanted to be able to tow around some of my trailers on my property. So I want to be able to put a receiver. And so I was like, I need the plate anyways. I need this extra area. I want to be able to bolt this on. So I figured this would be a perfect application because I have the plate. I can use this plate for the moving trailers around. I can also use it for the snowplow. One plate, less things to trip over, all that good stuff. So get that ordered. Meantime, shopping around for this plow. Originally I was just going to order it directly from the manufacturer. Figured that's the smartest way, easiest way to do it. And decided to look around and found Home Depot actually had it cheaper. I reached out to the salesperson I've been working with, Ken, and I said, hey Ken, I'm kind of surprised Home Depot has it cheaper. What's the deal with that? And he goes, for us it's the same either which way, however you order it from us or Home Depot. They're probably internally eating some of the cost. I said, all right. So I ordered from Home Depot, free shipping. Obviously it came right from Nordic Plow's warehouses. Got delivered to the house, no problem. Seeing the pictures here, comes in one box. It's kind of nice because it's plastic, so it's not nearly as heavy. Because it's all in sections, it just comes in one box. And typically what they do is they'll have the plow as one piece. So from here to here, it's the same, regardless of what you order. If it's for a zero turn, if it's for a golf cart, if it's for whatever, from here to here, it's exactly the same. The mounting part from the plow this way is different depending on your application. So once I got the plow in, it came with the basic mounting hardware. It was like a small receiver type tube thing with some brackets and some goofy stuff like that. And I wasn't mounting to ATV, so I didn't need all that stuff. And so I got everything out. You can see I'm building the plow in these pictures. I pull all the instructions out, lay everything out. Start piecing it together. You can see it goes together pretty easily in the photos here. You just kind of laid out the sections, kind of not snap together, they just line up. There's a bolt that holds them all together. Put the rest of the pieces on. The rectangular steel tube on the back goes on. All this stuff goes together, and then you end up with plow. The plow then mounts this bracket. The bracket like holds everything together and has the pivot point on it. And then in the pivot point area, I don't know how to really describe it, there's 3 holes. The 3 holes here, you can see where I'm pointing to, has a pin that goes down into those holes. The holes are here and down below. So that's where you get your angle of your plow. Forward, left, right, those are your angles. So you got the whole thing built, got it all straight, and then lined it up with this plate. And then you can see here, what I did was I did a build on the back of the Kubota here where I put a counterweight. So I had ordered a bunch of angle iron to build this counterweight. And on the angle iron, I took, obviously I had some extra, so it's about 1/4 inch thick angle iron. I took some of the angle iron, cut it down to just these lengths you see here in the photos. And here I just made 3 holes, made a length of 3, because what I was doing was mirror imaging one of their options they had. So not only did I get the hitch receiver so I could move trailers around, they also have an option on some of their equipment, I think it's mainly on their zero turn, that they have a hitch receiver mounting bracket for the plow. So same principle. There's a hole here that the pin goes through, and the beauty of this plow is there's one rod that goes through, and that rod that goes through here has some bushings that sit here, and then there's a counter pin. And that's all it is, put the plow on and off. So if I want to take this off the plate, it's just one rod and a counter pin off and a couple bushings. Also gives ability for the plow to kick back. So it has no downward force. That's one of the downsides. There's no downward force on the plow. The pivot point and the weight of the plow is where you get the force to the plow. So one of the things I talked to Ken about was, hey, how do you scrape things? It's like, really, it's not that big a deal. The weight of the plow is enough to drive down on it. So future modification, I may want to put some sort of spring shock type design here to push more downward force, but it actually works pretty well, so I'm not in a rush to do it. The other thing that comes with the plow, because it's one point of pivoting, so if you imagine this bracket sitting in your hitch receiver with the plow here, and you lift the plow up, the plow just falls forward. It could fall flat on its face because there's nothing holding it. It's just one pivot point back and forth. So they have a rod with a chain. You'll see that in some of my videos. It's a rod with a chain that holds the plow up. Now, inadvertently, not in my design at all, but when I was building it, I realized, if I put this bracket high enough on the skid steer plate and mount the plow high enough, instead of the plow just falling forward, it actually hits the bottom of my skid steer plate. So it can't fall forward. So it can't fall on its face, because if it falls on its face, you can't really get it back up. So I said, I don't really need this chain anymore. I tried it for a while to see if it just helped in getting angles and stuff. It really didn't make that big of a difference one way or another. If you have on like ATV with a winch that you're pulling up, you're gonna need it. Or on their design for their zero turn mower to pick it up off the ground and drop it back down, you need it. So anyways, take the angle iron, drill some holes out of it, and I want as low profile to this plate as possible. Talking with Ken and stuff, he's like, well, you could take, these brackets here and do some modification to hold your plow on. So I used these brackets here as the inspiration. Now it's double bolted because probably to give stability. It's nice and thick. Everything they build looks really nice. It's not like they cheap anything out. So with that, I was like, yeah, but I don't want to weld that. That's going to put it out another like 4 inches or something by the time you get from the distance of this and the back of the plate all the way to this hole up here. Like, that's 4 extra inches or so. I want it as low profile as possible. So he's like, well, no, that's what we got. I said, well, I'm going to mount my hitch receiver anyways, and how their hardware fits is just slides right into the hitch receiver, and they have a sleeve so it reduces the size. It's not the full size of the tube. So it reduces the size. So I go, if something happens in my design, if something happens with welding this bracket on, it breaks off, my angles aren't right, my holes aren't right, I can always revert back to just using the hitch. So I take the angle iron, drill 3 holes in it, make it that length, figure I got some play in it, benefit of the front loader, whatever height you need to set to, you can set the front loader for a plow pretty much any height you need. And so I just start lining everything up, make sure that these angle iron lines up correctly, and then I weld away. Now, I'm not a professional welder, far from a professional welder. I have a small Harbor Freight, the cheapest 115 volt 20 amp little MIG welder that they have. But what I did was, if you look on YouTube, look on Google, there's plenty of videos and write-ups on it. I took that welder and modified it to be a DC welder, and it made a night and day difference. A lot less splatter, a lot more controllable welds, and I was learning throughout the whole way. I built the counterweight first. I wanted it so that whenever I'm not using the backhoe on the tractor, I had some sort of counterweight. I ended up wanting, this tractor is low profile. I want it as short as possible. The whole point of a subcompact is it's subcompact. It's the smallest you can get. So even on the build on the back, I custom built the counterweight, or the weight box I built. It's actually sitting on top of all the mounting hardware for the backhoe. So it uses all the backhoe mounting hardware instead of like a 3-point hitch that's going to bring it out further and further back. So I had a bunch of steel for that. I was practicing my welding, building that. I figured that's not as big of a deal on welding. Everything I welded on the back, except for some areas, are also bolted, just to make sure they didn't have any failures. So I got decent with welding. So I took my inexpensive DC converted welder from Harbor Freight and started welding those brackets on. You know, took my sweet time, made sure I had my feed speed right, made sure I had nice clean surface, and got them welded on. Flipped the plate over. You see that the heat went all the way through, so people that say, oh, those little cheap welders you can't do a 1/4 inch thick plate. Well, this is a 1/4 inch thick skid steer plate, and you can see the heat penetrated through. And once it cooled down, hit it with a hammer, and nothing budged. Later on, I even, once I had the build all together, I mean, I put a lot of weight on this just to make sure. And I was very impressed. I was like, welds are holding. I'm going to damage this plow way before I'm going to damage those angle iron brackets on the skid steer plate. So got that all on, the welding done. At that point, I drilled the holes and got this tube put on. And then I painted the whole thing. And while that painting was being done, cured, I started making sure that I had everything I need to do the rest of the build. So I reached out to Ken, got things I needed from him to do the build. He sent everything over. Much appreciated to Nordic Plow and Ken for getting me those things. And then once I had all that, you know, this was cured, had all the hardware, I completed the build. And like I mentioned in some of the videos, you'll see this chain thing on it. I've aborted that from now, that's why you don't see it here. But I got the whole thing built, put the plate on, and pretty much I was good to go. So last year, 2020 into 2021 winter, I had this plow. I actually didn't complete the build until early January of 2021. And we actually got a decent amount of snow. Ended up doing the combo platter where I used this plow, pushed it into a pile, and then used the front loader, or the bucket off on the front loader, and actually scooped and dumped it. I'm in a quote unquote rural area. It's still in the city, but we have ditches in the front instead of like sidewalks or curbs or, you know, storm sewers. So I just scooped it and dumped it all in there. So it worked out freaking awesome. Helped some neighbors out and things like that. So you can see in some of my other videos, that I'm plowing with this blade, but one of the nuisances is I got to get out off the tractor, get out, pull these two pins, angle the blade, put the two pins back in, and now I can plow at an angle. And doing a straight driveway, not a big deal. You start down the center with an angled one way, you go down that way with the angled. When you come back, you're going up the opposite side with the angled. You go back down, and you just keep going back and forth till you get all the way to the sides. Not a big deal. I do my neighbor's driveway typically too, and his is a little more cumbersome where I can't get away with doing that same thing. A lot of big wide open area that needs to be plowed. So I'd have to get out and change the angle. And just even doing my own driveway sometimes, like, well, I kind of miss that patch. I wish I could just angle it and not have to get out every time. Because it's not a big deal to get off and change it, but it's annoying to get the pins to line up because there's a hole on top and a hole on the bottom. And when it's dark, you're trying to see where the pins line up and it's not quite lining up. It's not hard to do, don't get me wrong. You could get away with just the pins, it's not a big deal. But I want to be lazy and more efficient at doing it, so I was like, I gotta find out a better way. So first year done, happy with the plow. Plow's been working great. I've seen a few areas of stress, like here. I see some bowing here. A lot of that's just the force. I mean, obviously the Kubota has a decent amount of ability to push and do some damage, but nothing that makes me alarmed about this plow is gonna fail. So with that said, I said, I'm gonna do a linear actuator. I looked at all the kits to do a hydraulic third function valve, thought about getting grapplers and everything else. I don't have that much land that I need grapplers for. I don't have that much brush. There's a few times it'd be nice to have it. And I was like, you know what, for the expense of doing the third function valve, all the hydraulic fluid, all the tube running, everything else, like electrical wire is very easy to maneuver. It's very easy to work with. I'm gonna do a linear actuator. Started doing a bunch of research on linear actuators and found out a lot of people complain about the stuff from China. Like plastic parts and the plastic gears, too much pressure, you strip a gear, you crack a gear or whatever. So a lot of people raved about progressive linear actuators. So I kind of set myself on the PA17 from Progressive. They have two options. One, well, they have voltage options, but their two base options are either with a potentiometer or without. So you could get feedback and precision. For the plow, I don't need that. So I just got the regular 12 volt linear actuator. It has a rating of 2,000 pounds with a 4,000 pound holding. I figure that's gonna be more than enough for what I'm doing. And so I made that decision last season, and I just kind of through summer months waited, looked at the Amazon Prime Day deals, and sure enough it came up in the Prime Day deals. And so I picked it up, and it's been sitting ever since. And then all of a sudden this winter I had some downtime after I got done with some other yard work and got my backhoe off from doing all this other yard work. I decided to do the build on the linear actuator. So some of the videos here, you can see that I got the linear actuator. I put it on here, did a test fit with it. And I saw that, lack of better terms, the wings at where the plow actually sits. And the other thing with the plow I didn't mention before, it does have the ability to do a kickback. So if you do catch something, it will kick back. So that's what these springs are for. That's what's in Nordic Plow's new design, their second design from the original. So there's a couple pivot points on each side. And I noticed when I was test fitting the linear actuator, those pivot points are the farthest route out without reinforcement. I kind of, you can see in this video, it kind of went sideways. So I decided I need to do something about that. So I reinforced, I had some, again, leftover steel. I reinforced everywhere where the linear actuator is mounting. The linear actuator is mounted on the progressive designed mounts. They're actually supposed to sit the other way around, but due to the limitation of this cavity in here on the inside, I was stuck with putting them the wrong way. They come with pretty large head hex bolts. I just went ahead and did Allen key bolts. I went ahead and did a lower profile hex bolt to give me a little bit more play. And the linear actuator, the holes at the ends can be angled any which way. So I did get it angled the way I needed it to. This also, the angle allows for the kickback not to hit the linear actuator itself. So I got all test fit. You can see in these pictures here, I'm building up the build of the cross supports for everything. The back one that comes back here is pretty easy, just angle iron with some holes. The other ones I welded in some brackets to kind of give a squared area to support the side to squeeze it. So got that all built up, got all mounted after I got everything painted, and then once I got that done, I did this build of my control knobs. And got all the wiring. It's wired with 2 different relays. The 2 relays are, one is really a linear actuator control, but it's only good for 10 amps. This thing's rated at 20 amps. I wasn't planning to use it the full rating, so I figured, okay, I'll use the 10 amp because it has a safety feature. If I hit both buttons at the same time, I'm not going to short it out. But I need more current. So the low control module is feeding a winch relay that's good for something like 50 or 60 amps, some crazy thing like that. So that feeds into the winch relay. And Kubota being awesome, they leave a bunch of extra hookups. So right under the steering column, there's a taped wire, blue taped wire that just is a connector. That connector is wired to a 12 volt hot when key on. So that's wired to the control module. The control module is then controlled by the 2 buttons on this knob. So that control module is wired to the buttons on the knob, and that control module output then feeds the controls for the winch relay, and then obviously the motors powered to the winch relay. When I did my light build on this tractor, I added a self-resettable circuit breaker fuse that's like good for like 100 amps. So the actuator is actually powered through the winch relay through that fuse, and the control itself is just powered through the small, I don't know what the rating is of it. I have to pop off the Kubota fuse panel, but that's protected by the built-in fuse, and all that's doing is providing power to the small control module. So had that all wired up. You can see all the pictures of wiring. I should have took some more pictures. There's a couple other ones that were just too dark or blurry to share, but got that all wired up. It's just in that cavity underneath the steering column. There's plenty of room to get things to fit. I know that's where the airflow goes for cooling. There's still a lot of air in it, a lot of room, or I should say room for air to flow. I don't anticipate any overheating problems. I'm not using this for commercial applications anyways. So I got that all through, and now the actuator's wired up. I got it all reinforced. Got some videos here of it going back and forth. And it works really well. The nice thing is you don't have to worry about bumping the buttons when it's off and moving around. It's only when the tractor's on. So if I just click the tractor on, I now have the ability to go to the right, go all the way to the left, and then go straight. So I've been very happy with it so far. We've only had one snowfall, and it was not a very aggressive one. We'll see what Chicago brings coming up, if we're going to get some more snowfalls. I'll put another video up on it, but so far I'm super excited with it. Super happy with the Nordic plow, super happy with the build. Right now I wouldn't have done anything differently on the build. I do have a connector over here. You can't really see it, but I do have a connector over here that disconnects the plow from the plate from the tractor. Another connector over by the quick disconnects for the front loader, so that way you disconnect the power there to take the front loader off. So overall happy. Feel free to put any questions on here, reach out if you have any questions about the build or parts or anything like that. But overall, if you're looking at doing something like this and you want to stay away from a steel blade, want to stay away from super expensive options with third hydraulic valves, this is probably the least expensive build you can do. I may have spent a little bit more money on the linear actuators, a little more money on certain parts than others could find cheaper, but overall I'm very, very happy with it. And pretty much for me, this build I'd do exactly again. So again, reach out if you got any questions, and thanks again for sitting through my jargling about this whole thing, but hopefully you learned something new about it. All right, have a good one.